And how does, again, eating a hamburger directly affect biodiversity loss? And let me expand that question. How does it affect biodiversity loss, and how does it affect species extinction? It's hard to connect. I go to a restaurant, eat a cheeseburger. How am I affecting biodiversity loss and species extinction? And does it matter if we affect biodiversity loss and species extinction?
One of my friends is Tashka Yawanawa. He's the chief of the Yawanawa tribe in Brazil. They're a community of several hundred that are trying to live in their traditional way and keep hope and their culture alive in the face of all of the threats of colonization and an ecosystem loss. They're also the stewards of the land. They have a very large area of rainforest, and in Brazilian law, they are the protectors of it, and that's how they see themselves because they've been granted title to this land. They have encroachment, however, on the land, the rainforest land that they are helping to protect. Rainforests are sometimes considered the lungs of the earth. They have a level of biodiversity most of us cannot even fathom. And yet what they face is encroachment from ranchers. In fact, the past president of Brazil his biggest backer was the cattle industry. And he was very anti-indigenous. These things go together in Brazil because the indigenous people want the rainforest, which is their homeland, intact. They see themselves as stewards of it. And the ranchers want to chop it down and burn it so they can have more grazing land. And so, the Yawanawa people, actually, we helped them with a nonprofit that I ran some years back to raise money so they could buy an airplane and a satellite phone, so that they could patrol the area and look for signs of illegal ranching operations and then report them to the government so that it could be stopped. This is the direct confrontation they were in regularly. This is one little example that illustrates the larger picture, which is that the single largest driving force behind the destruction of traditional ecosystems, and rainforests being the most powerful one when it comes to biodiversity, is livestock production. Number two is cutting down land to grow soybeans. Guess where the soybeans are going? The livestock. So at the end of the day, if you want to ask whose fingers are really on the chainsaw, well, it's the consumers. It's the people whose appetite for beef is causing this. And by the way, rainforest beef, for the most part, is grass-fed beef. Those cows are eating grass, and people think that's a great thing, but I don't think so.
And just as a side, go ahead.
I can add to that, Ocean. The grass-fed industries are perhaps the most destructive industries on the planet. You're right. People think that they're more natural. People think that it's better than confining animals in feedlots, but it's so wasteful, and it's most wasteful of our most precious resource, which is land. So if you argue for grass-fed beef, for example, and not lot-fed, what you're doing is you're arguing for more deforestation. And there was a study done in North America last year that said that if we, comparing the current production methods, which include feedlot as well as growing up young on grass, compared with totally grass-fed, we'd need 4 times the area. So, which we don't have. It's just not possible to have that land. So you're arguing for deforestation if you argue for grass-fed. The other aspect of grass-fed is that most grass-fed animals are malnourished. They're not getting the nutrients they need. You look at pictures of cattle, say in Africa, where they are totally grass-fed. Those cattle don't look anything like the condition that you see cattle in, say, the North America. And the reason for that is that they're fattened for their last 100 days in feedlots. And they correct the imbalance of nutrients. There, they bring the meat back to marketable quality meat. So, the current system is very efficient at producing lots of good quality meat. But if we go to grain-fed, grass-fed, which a lot of people advocate less but better, it's not better at all. It's malnourished, and it hits the forest. So all round, it's bad.
A few weeks ago, I heard Al Gore speak on climate change, And as usual, he concentrated solely on fossil fuel burning. But his one reference to animal agriculture was to celebrate how wonderful regenerative agriculture is, which is a sort of a subset of the grass-fed meat. And it's just nonsense. It's just a hoax. I mean, something like 1% of the beef eaten in the United States is grass-fed beef. And a small percentage of that is the so-called regenerative beef. And we would need 4 planet Earths to eat regenerative beef. And it's no healthier for you than the feedlot beef. It's equally unhealthy.
I don't know how
if I may just add to that, I just want to say that personally, I feel sad about that. Like, I want any solution that'll help our planet. And when I first heard all the enthusiasm about regenerative beef, I was like, wow, if it works, I mean, whatever, right? But unfortunately, as you're saying, it's a mirage. And so everybody knows, though, most all beef pretty much starts out on grass. So the first half or more of a cow's life is in the US, for example, is on grass, and then they're moved to feedlots for the finishing/fattening stage. So they may gain 800 pounds in the fields, and then they'll gain their last half of their weight to get to 1,400 or 1,600 pounds in a feedlot. So that's just the typical life cycle. So we're all aware of how that works. And grass-fed typically also means grass-finished, which means they live their whole life on pasture. And instead of taking another 6 months to gain that extra weight, they take another year or two. And so, and they end up at a little weight lighter, like they end up at 1,200 or 1,400 pounds instead of 1,600. So feedlots intensify, they speed up the process, and all that feedstuffs makes them get fatter faster. And but unfortunately, when they're on the grass-fed area, they're way longer belching methane and taking up space, which means that it actually winds up being less efficient from a land use perspective.
One thing
actually,
go ahead.
Sorry, if I can add to that, Ocean. I've just finished an investigation into regenerative grazing, regenerative ranching, and there's 3 tricks that are used extensively. What you have is confirmation bias. If you want to believe that it's good for the planet, good for the soil, good for carbon soaking and everything, you'll believe that. And soil science is such a dark art and really hard to do properly that you get this confirmation bias. But there's 3 things that the studies that support the claims, or they say support their claims, they're based on 3 things, which are really such wonderful trickery. I call it the bluffer's guide to soil carbon. And the first thing that they do is that, if you take cropland, any land that's being cropped, the soil in cropland that's been turned over is depleted of carbon dramatically. So if you return that cropland to grassland, automatically the grasses staying on the ground and their roots growing underneath will increase the soil carbon. So that's the first trick you look for. The second trick is even better, and that is that places like White Oaks pasture, they have these chicken pens that fertilize the ground, and then they move them around and it fertilizes, so the cattle eat that. The trick here is that the carbon increase in the soil, which it will increase if you do fertilize like that, the carbon increase comes from the grain that's fed to the chickens, not from the management practice, the grazing management. So the imported carbon for the soil comes from grain, not from management. And the third thing that they do is what is it? It eludes me now. But anyway, there's 3 tricks. I'm writing it all up now. It should be available pretty soon. But it's smoke and mirrors. It's trickery, unfortunately, but it's great for marketing, and it seems to have a groundswell behind it now that will make it continue.